This video training provides an overview of state and federal law and Lake Washington School District policy regarding service animals. On September 15, 2010, the U.S. Department of Justice published revised final regulations implementing the Americans with Disabilities Act, called the ADA, for Title II, State and Local Government Services, and Title III, Public Accommodations and Commercial Facilities. The regulations provided a definition of service animal under the ADA. A service animal means any dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of an individual with a disability, including a physical, sensory, psychiatric, intellectual, or other mental disability. Examples of such work or tasks include guiding people who are blind, alerting people who are deaf, pulling a wheelchair, alerting and protecting a person who is having a seizure, reminding a person with mental illness to take prescribed medications, calming a person with post-traumatic stress disorder during an anxiety attack, or performing other duties. The work or task a dog has been trained to provide must be directly related to the person's disability. Dogs whose sole function is to provide comfort or emotional support do not qualify as service animals under the ADA. Such animals are referred to as emotional support animals or comfort animals. Under the ADA, state and local governments, businesses, and nonprofit organizations that serve the public generally must allow service animals to accompany people with disabilities in all areas of the facility where the public is normally allowed to go. The animal must be housebroken and vaccinated in accordance with state and local laws. The ADA does not require covered entities to provide for the care or supervision of a service animal, including cleaning up after the animal. While emotional support animals or comfort animals are sometimes used as part of a medical treatment plan as therapy animals, they are not considered service animals under the ADA. Such support animals provide companionship, relieve loneliness, and sometimes help with depression, anxiety, and certain phobias, but do not have special training to perform tasks that assist people with disabilities that is the hallmark of a bona fide service animal. These animals are also not limited to working with people with disabilities and therefore are not covered by federal laws protecting the use of service animals. Service animals require a handler. The handler is responsible for the supervision and care of the service animal. Under the ADA, service animals must be harnessed, leashed, or tethered unless these devices interfere with the service animal's work or the individual's disability prevents using these devices. In that case, the individual must maintain control of the animal through voice, signal, or other effective controls. In many instances, the individual with the disability is the service animal handler, but in some instances, a different individual may serve as the handler. When it is not obvious what service an animal provides, only limited inquiries are allowed. Staff may only ask 2 questions. 1. Is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? 2. What work or task has the dog been trained to perform? These questions should not be asked, however, if the animal's service tasks are obvious. Questions cannot be asked about the person's disability. Medical documentation or special identification card may not be required of the person with a disability. Training documentation may not be requested for the service animal, and the dog may not be required to demonstrate its ability to perform the work or task. Allergies and fear of dogs are not valid reasons for denying access or refusing service to people using service animals. When a person who is allergic to dog dander and a person who uses a service animal must spend time in the same room or facility, for example, in a school classroom or at a homeless shelter, they both should be accommodated by assigning them, if possible, to different locations within the room or different rooms in the facility. In addition to the provisions about service dogs, the revised ADA regulations have a new, separate provision about miniature horses that have been individually trained to do work or perform tasks for people with disabilities. Washington state law defines a service animal as an animal that is trained for the purposes of assisting or accommodating a disabled person's sensory, mental, or physical disability. Comfort or emotional support animals are not considered service animals under Washington state law. In 2016, the Lake Washington School District adopted a policy regarding service animals in schools, on school property, and at school-sponsored events. Policy ACAC acknowledges the district's obligation as a place of public accommodation to permit students and adults with disabilities to be accompanied by a service animal as required by federal laws and Washington State's law against discrimination. The district defines service animal according to Washington State law. The parent or guardian of a student who uses a service animal must submit a written request to the building principal or site administrator. The building principal, in consultation with the Section 504 coordinator or director of special services, will determine how to accommodate the request for use of a service animal. A district staff member who uses a service animal may request an ADA accommodation through the district's Human Resources Department. Also in 2016, the district developed regulations for service animals in schools, on school property, and school-sponsored events. This is Regulation ACAC-R. The district regulations define the use of service animals in accordance with state law and state that the use of a service animal by an individual with a disability will not be conditioned on the payment of a fee, security deposit, or surcharge. The regulations state that before a service animal will be permitted in schools, on school property, or at school-sponsored events, the individual with a disability or the animal's handler may be requested to provide a description of the task or tasks the service animal is expected to perform in assisting the individual with a disability, unless it is readily apparent that the animal is trained to do work or perform tasks for that individual. The district will provide access in schools, on school property, and at school-sponsored events to service animals for those individuals with a disability who use a service animals for specific tasks performed by the service animal because of the individual's disability, provided that the service animal has been individually trained to perform such tasks. The service animal must be housebroken, free of disease and parasites, and have a harness, leash, or tether so it cannot run free and is under the control of the person with a disability or the animal's handler. A service animal must also be licensed and immunized in accordance with the laws, regulations, and ordinances of King County and the state of Washington. The regulations state that animal handlers who will be present in school, on school property, or at school-sponsored events for the purpose of assisting a student with his or her service animal are required, as with all other district volunteers, to complete and pass applicable criminal background checks. In addition, handlers must comply with all standards of conduct that apply to school employees and volunteers while they are at school, on school property, or at school-sponsored events. The district has developed service animal guidelines for these instances. The regulations state that the service animal must be under the control of its handler. The regulations include information about the removal or exclusion of a service animal from school or school property should any of the following situations occur. If the animal is out of control, not housebroken, poses a direct threat to the health or safety of others, significantly disrupts or interferes with the instruction program, fails to consistently perform the function or service to assist or accommodate the individual with the disability, or if the handler fails to appropriately care for the animal. If you have any questions about the federal or state laws regarding service animals or the Lake Washington School District's policy and regulations regarding service animals, please contact the Special Services Department or a Director of School Support.